All right, guys, welcome back to another tutorial for my third render for my Happy Toolbox 3D assets. Let's go ahead and use this one right here. This is the plastic tub, and I have a little bit of an idea of an animation that I want to do for it, and I think this could be really, really fun. Let me just go ahead and find the file, drop that into my downloads. If you guys missed the last tutorial, this is what we covered in the last tutorial, just kind of had to do some fun texturing work. Again, this is a model that I got offline. Shout out to the Happy Toolbox. Let me go ahead and click on File, New, General, Save. Let me save this one real quick as plastic bins. All right, and let's go ahead and click on File, Import, FBX. Go to my downloads, scroll through, plastic tub. So this is a plastic tub that they have modeled, which is fantastic. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the different pieces. Here's what I have in mind for this. First of all, go to rendered view, snap to my camera, add in a nice plain surface for us to work with here. Hold up a second. There we go. And then let's go ahead and switch over to an orthographic view for my camera because I love a nice orthographic view. Delete our light. Let's get some HDRI lighting on here. You guys already know where I'm going with this. HDRIs. Let's click on this one. This one's nice and bright. Let's just give our plane a solid black color for right now so we can see what we're doing. And let's finally narrow in our scene up. We're going to up that pass part out, which is just going to kind of narrow us in our scene. All right, let's zoom in. So for this one, I'm imagining these could be some clear bins. So let's go ahead and experiment with that. I'm just going to go ahead and make a new glass material. And I'm going to make sure that's on both of these objects. Already, this looks really fun and really cool. I'm going to make this just like a slight blue material. Roughness, we'll do 0.25 and see how that looks. Now, this isn't necessarily supposed to be glass, so I'm going to actually make a mix shader for this. Let's go into rendered view. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. Let's take a look at our nodes. So these are the only two nodes right now that are making up this material. I'm going to show you guys how to make a fun little mix shader. Add in a mix shader node, plug it in right here. Now you're going to see, oh my gosh, Kenny, you just ruined my material. Well, that's because we don't have anything plugged into this second slot. We have to mix this with a glossy BSDF. Now I don't know how this is going to look. Let's just go ahead and take a look at what it's going to give us. All right, that's definitely what I was going for. Let me copy the material or the color over by just hovering over this, copying and pasting onto our glossy. Let me lower that roughness. And now look at this material we have. Now what's really cool is we can adjust this FAC to decide, okay, do we want this to be completely glass or completely glossy? Or do we want it to be a mix of both? I'm actually going to lower this a little bit more. I want it to be more on the glass side. But I think this looks really cool. I think it reminds me of like kind of a bin that you would have maybe like in storage or something like that. And I think this blue is good. Maybe just a little bit more saturated. And I'm going to copy that over to the other side. That looks fantastic. Here's what I'm going to do next. I am going to zoom my camera way out, and we're going to create a really fun animation. But the first thing we need to do is I'm going to go ahead and parent this bottom of the box to the top. I'm going to shift click, Control P, parent, object. Oops, sorry. Parent, object, keep transform. And then I'm going to duplicate these. I'm going to shift D and then hold Z so that we're snapping to the Z axis. I'm going to switch back over to solid view. I'm going to go to my X-ray mode, and I'm going to make sure these are stacked and nested nicely. That looks good. And then I'm going to turn on random, snap back to my camera, and just see what that looks like. Now, I want these to all be different colored bins. So what I think I'll do is I'll just duplicate this material, and I'm going to make this one, how about red? And I'm going to copy that material over to both. And I think that looks really nice. And I think for my next one, and I'm just going to continue to use this process, I'm going to duplicate, Shift D, Z. And then I'm going to show you a cool little trick. Instead of having to do that again, I believe it's Shift R to repeat the last action. Now I have my 4 stacked boxes. I'm just going to go ahead and create a material for each one of these. This one, I think I'll make this one green. And again, I'm copying my material over to both sides of our mix shader. I'm going to duplicate material for the last one, and I think this one's going to be yellow. and make sure you're duplicating your material for both sides. Just like that. And now if we go back, we have a nice stacked set of bins. Just like that. And I think this looks really nice. And I think you guys probably know where I'm going with this. I'm probably going to be animating these. Let's go ahead and start by making sure our background is really bright. Maybe a lower roughness. Let's see. Semi-metallic, low roughness. That looks good. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Another thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is we're going to up our light path. So in our max bounces, just make sure those are all set to 20. You can copy all my settings I have here. I would not enable fast GI approximation. I think that kind of destroys it sometimes. Let's go over to our shading one more time. And I just want to double check something because I don't like that this isn't that transparent. For the IOR, let's try 1.2. That looks much better. I'm going to switch my IOR, which is index of refraction, for each one of these, and I'm going to set it to 1.2. And then let's do the last one, 1.2. Now you can like really see through these boxes. So if I select one of these boxes, you should be able to see right through it to the other side. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. They look pretty good. I'm just wondering if I can adjust maybe the roughness on these just a little bit. Let's see. Let's see how we can make these look. Maybe 0.25 roughness for each one. And I think it does look really, really good. I'm kind of going to experiment with this actual shader itself. Maybe for the FAC, we do 0.25. Actually, let's do 0.1. And we're going to change that for each one. I probably should have experimented a little bit more with the roughness and such for each one of these. And 0.1. Again, I'm just copying the FAC for each one of these. I want them to be a little bit more transparent. That's what I'm going for here. All right, I think these materials look pretty good for the most part. You can see right through them, which is exactly what I was going for. And I feel like they have that kind of like soft plastic look, which is sort of what I'm going for. This red is a little bit too intense, so I'm going to turn the saturation down a little bit. And I'm going to copy that over. That looks a little bit better. And then for our floor, you already know what I'm going to add. A nice like brick floor. Let's go ahead and plug in our brick texture. Let's adjust our scale to 20. Let's adjust our width to 0.2 and 0.2. Let's adjust our colors here. Something like that is good. And then let's go ahead and adjust the mortar size. 0.005. Adjust that scale back to 15. And I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe lower the roughness just a little bit. And now we kind of have this nice tile floor look, which is kind of what I'm going for. And I think this looks good so far. Watch what happens when we enable depth of field. So this is the fun part. I love enabling depth of field. As you guys know from my previous tutorials, I'm going to go ahead and click on depth of field. And already we have a really strong depth of field, which looks really fun and more playful than it was before. I'm also going to adjust my camera to a nice 45-degree angle and make sure I even out each coordinate for the location of the actual camera itself. I'm going to kind of raise up the camera a little bit. Now, I actually am going to zoom out. And the reason I'm going to do that is, one, we have a smaller sense of scale for these objects. And I'm actually going to push that tile floor bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down. I'm going to up the scale to like 5. Now let's do 10. 10. That looks good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to animate these so that they kind of all pop out and then they collapse back together, if that makes sense. In order to do that, let me pull up my timeline. Let me turn off X-ray mode. I don't need that anymore. And now we have all of our bins. Now each bin is controlled by the top of the bin. So wherever the top of the bin goes, the whole bin goes. Let's decide how long we want this animation to be. I'm thinking no more than 60 frames at 30 frames a second. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that over here. And then I'm going to go ahead and animate my first one. Now, in order for this to work nicely too, I'm going to push my camera up so we have more room at the top. I'm going to click on my first lid, insert, location, and rotation. And then I'm thinking by frame 30, this should be where I want it. So I'll move it up. I'll rotate it on the y-axis to 90, insert, location, and rotation. So now if you take a look, we'll have something that looks like that. Now I actually want to adjust my interpolation mode to back and see how that looks. See that? I really like that because it feels like it's floating up, kind of like it starts low and it floats up like that. I like that a lot. And then I'll probably just duplicate the first keyframe. I'm just going to highlight the first keyframe, Shift D. You can see I can put it wherever I want it. I'm going to put it on 60. So it's going to go up and then back. Now, when it goes back, I don't want it to have the same interpolation mode. So I'm going to choose Bezier for that. So let's see how that looks. See? Much better. All right. Now, this one right here, where are we going to have this one land? Well, first of all, let's go ahead and insert the location and rotation. But instead of inserting it on frame 1, I'm actually going to move forward to frame 5. Insert location and rotation. Wait for this other one to settle. Maybe at around frame 20, this one will just move up. I'm going to rotate it on the Y, maybe like 45. Insert location and rotation. Now this one has to settle before the other one, so I'm going to duplicate the first keyframe onto 50. See that? So this is going to be kind of a tricky thing here because I might even have this thing go higher on frame 30. Let's have it go a little bit higher, give it more room. Why is it not do that? See if that worked. Perfect. Okay, so let's select our last lid. Now at about frame 15, this last lid, we can have that do something. Let's go ahead and do location and rotation. And then maybe by frame 30, it can move up. Now I'm going to have to shift everything. I think I'm going to give myself 120 frames for this because it's looking like we're going to need a little bit of extra time for everything. So I'm going to highlight my keyframes. I'm going to scale them out. And this whole thing is going to happen over 120 frames. This one we're going to have to adjust as well. I'm going to shift that over to 10. And I'm going to scale it out using S shortcut. And I'll have it finish at about 100. Now remember, we have to highlight the keyframes we want and adjust that interpolation mode to back. Right, so for this one, for the last two keyframes, we're going to do Bezier. So it'll slowly collapse back down. And then for our third lid, we're going to go to frame 20. And this is kind of the boring part, but this is kind of the part you need to do. Now we have our location and rotation. I'm thinking at around frame 50, it can rise up just a little bit. And we'll just give it some of the slightest rotation this way, possibly, maybe like that. Insert location and rotation. So now we'll get something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust the interpolation mode to back. And then it's going to have to collapse by 80. So by 80, I'm going to duplicate the first keyframe. Make sure by frame 80, this box comes back. But I want it to come back on a Bezier curve. Perfect. Now, nothing's happening with the bottom box. So I might just have the bottom box just spin at about, it'll start at about frame 30. I'll just insert the location and rotation as usual, just in case we change our mind. And then by frame 70, I'll have it spin all the way around 180. Let's see what that looks like. Pretty cool. Now, what's really fun about this is I can just bump this up to 60 frames a second, and we can see what that's going to look like. Kind of fun. Let's see what that looks like in rendered view. Kind of fun, right? And it's just this fun little animation. I think it looks really cool. The only other thing I can think of is I might adjust the materials of the top lid and see if I can. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this material, and I'm just gonna raise the roughness on both, and maybe adjust the color a little bit and make it slightly less saturated. Kind of like that. Yep. Let's do 0.5. You know what? I definitely want the lid to be a different color. Yeah. Or not a different color, but like this color, but slightly different. Like different for the actual material, if that makes sense. So right now we're at a FAC of 0.5, 5.5, and 1. All right. So I'm going to adjust the FAC for this material, 0.5, 0.5, and 1. Just like that. So now all these lids, if we look, are going to be just slightly more rough. And I actually think that's better. I think it makes the animation look a little bit better. Again, just duplicating the material, clicking on this little button. FAC, we'll do 0.5, 0.5, and 1. Same here for the bottom. Duplicate that, pop all this open, 0.5, 0.5, and 1. Just like that. And I think that looks really nice. Now, this is actually a little bit too bright, this background. So let me just adjust the roughness a little bit. It looks a little bit better. All right, let's see what that looks like. Kind of fun. Now, how do we take this a step further? Right now, we're at 60 frames a second, which is a lot. Let's bump that back down to 30 and see the real speed. All right, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be really interesting. Make sure you guys pay attention to this part if you want to achieve this, because this is going to be a little bit more on the not complex side, but you need to make sure you don't miss a step. I'm going to wrap all of these into a group. In other words, I'm going to put them inside of an empty. So I'm going to add an empty cube. I'm going to scale it up beyond the size of all of my objects that I want to like contain. And then I'm going to highlight all of these. Oops, I'm going to go to my side view. Highlight all of these. Make sure you don't highlight the floor. And then shift click your cube. Control P, object, keep transform. Oops, I'm sorry. Control P, object. Well, I'm going to try both of these. Hold on. Now we're going to do the last one then. Transform without inverse. We might actually have to undo this. Hold on one second, guys. Sorry. I probably should have parented them before I animated them. That is 100% my fault. And I don't know if I can undo it without having to undo all the steps. But, see something. All right, that's my fault. So the plan was going to be I could rotate them. They would all split apart, and then we could just bring them back together. But since I already animated them, I think I might have gone a couple steps too far. Totally my fault. You know what, though? I am curious about something with the actual materials themselves. I do think I could probably reduce the saturation a little bit on these. Let's see. I just think they're a little bit too saturated. Yep, that's 100% better. You're still going to get that same green look. See, yeah, I'm much more. And this is why I experiment so much with materials and like different ideas and options, lighting, things like that. As I just think it's so important to find the perfect like balance. Like I'm much more happier with this than everything before. So now when we press play, we have all these individual bins. It looks really nice. And then the only thing we're really missing here is maybe some better lighting. And then I'm going to bump up the contrast here. I'm going to go to high contrast. And then we'll enable motion blur for this render since it's an animation. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click on... So I don't have any lighting besides studio. So like, yeah, see, we're getting completely different lighting here. Different lighting here. Let's see what this one looks like. Different lighting here. But I will tell you, I'm very excited for this render because I think this looks super cool already. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and add an area light real quick and just see what we can make this look like with some of our own custom lighting, not just relying on the HDRIs. I'm going to bring this area light up. I'm going to bump this up to 500. And just like that, we have some interesting lighting here. Remember, you can really decide how you want this to look. You go into the animation tab, you can now switch everything out over here on this side while not affecting your render too much. This is pretty cool. See what it looks like mid-frame. Not sure if I love it. Let me switch out the HDRI to... I liked this one, actually. That one kind of looked fun. The importance of lighting. Oh, I cannot stress it enough. Let's experiment a little bit more. See, even from this side, even if we took this and we just angled it at just the right angle, right? And we just brought it right here, right? And now we have this really, really strong highlight like that. And we could bump this up to, I don't know, 1000. And now we have like a really strong highlight from the left. But again, let's experiment here. Let's find out what works best. That's kind of nice. A little too warm. Let's try a studio light and see what that looks like. Now we got a really, really dark looking render. Maybe not the best for what we're going for. We've got an outdoor kind of scene here. That's kind of, so look at that strong shadow. Again, completely changing the lighting. So this part, honestly, is the part that takes me the longest for my renders, because I'm sitting here trying to figure out what is going to be the best lighting setup and why. Like, why is it the best lighting setup? And then I'll experiment around with our HDRI. I'll go ahead and come in here. I'll add some mapping. I'll add some texture coordinate. And I'll just plug everything in like this. And I'll just adjust that Z value until I find something I think I like. And I'll just completely swap out the HDRI again, because I am crazy. All right. Oh, hold on. See, this is more like what I was trying to accomplish, right? And now I want to go ahead and adjust the scale of my tile floor as well. It's interesting because it's kind of hard to tell, are we really into this macro shot, or are these bins really big? Because these bins are supposed to be really big, but I kind of want them to feel smaller on purpose, because I feel like that makes it a little more interesting. And I also want to make sure I have my my bump map set up correctly for this. Add bump. And we're just going to plug in the color into the height. And we're going to plug in the normal into the normal. Just like that. All right, cool. And then I'm also going to adjust my mortar smooth to 1. Now we have this really interesting tile floor right here. I believe we can add a color ramp here, and I think we can make it smoother, right? I believe. Yes, so if we zoom in here, we can make it, instead of linear, we can do ease, I think. And mortar smooth, we'll do 1. And I think there's a way, I don't remember if I'm doing it right or not. Looks really good, though. Definitely looks better than it did before. And if we really wanted to, we can make this scale like 1, and now we have these huge tiles, right? But it's interesting to try to figure out what is the best approach here. I kind of like when the tiles are smaller. Again, that's just me, my personal preference. This looks really good so far. I'm going to bump up that contrast and see how that looks. Very high contrast. This is awesome. And then roughness-wise for the background, maybe we can bump that up a little bit. I mean, it's looking pretty good. What do you guys think so far? I think it's looking really nice. I could experiment with this for a very, very long time. Let's go ahead and add some roughness to the top of our bins. Let's go to the shading tab, and let's just go ahead and add in a image texture. And let's just add in that same image texture I've been using for the other ones. It's just got like a nice fingerprint touch on it. Where is it? There it is. Let's just add this in. I'm going to add in some texture coordinate. Add in some mapping. And then after that, we're going to be done very soon with this. Plug in the color to the roughness for both of these. Now, you're going to notice it turns kind of like metallic, because I forgot to add a color ramp so that we can finally adjust this. There we go. Now we should be able to adjust this how we want. And I am going to make sure this is on non-color. Yep, there we go. Now we have a little bit of roughness on here, but let's go ahead and bump up the scale. Now let's bump down the scale to like 0.5. And let's adjust this. That might not be the right texture. Let's switch to texture. Now this might not be the right one. Let's try a different one. How about this guy? A little bit more scratchy. Okay, that's a little bit better. Definitely on the right track here. We don't want it to be too much. Hold on. That's a little too much. Let's bump the scale back up to 1. See, that's a little bit too glossy there. And I think we lose... So I think I'm going to only plug it into the glass part. Or vice versa. Let's see. And this is where the experimentation comes in, and you have to really decide and pick and choose like what you want. See, that has just enough texture where I feel like it doesn't look terrible. It's so hard to tell from a distance. I might just not even... I might completely disregard what I was about to do. We could... there's just so many things we could do. I actually think this looks really good. I especially like the way the light is coming through on these bins right here. We could scratch them up a little bit. I just feel like it's going to be a really long render if I add too much detail. I'm pretty happy with the way they look right now. And if we look at this like motion blur here, let's render out 1 frame, see how it looks. 200% render, and we'll do, I don't know, 50 samples, and just to see how that looks. Render image, and let's just see how this is coming out. And thank you guys for staying tuned for so long. I really appreciate it. As you can see, this isn't coming out terrible. The tile floor looks great. That's really in focus. We might have to adjust our focus length. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. You guys will see this completed render on Instagram once it's done. But this is like, these models are so much fun to mess around with because they're pretty high quality. That looks really cool. This is going to be a fun little render. And you already know I'm going to add some kind of sound effects or something like that. Excuse me. This looks great. All right. I might have to call it on that, guys. This is looking fantastic. I'll render this out, and I'll show you guys how it's going to look on Instagram. But I hope you guys have a great day if you're watching on YouTube. Take care. Have a fantastic day. I do have to go. I got to get on with my day. I'm glad I knocked out 3 solid tutorials though today, so I'm happy about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it was informative and fun. Again, I hope you enjoyed that it's not edited because a lot of people edit their videos like crazy. I try not to do that so that you get the actual full take, the raw take, what's actually happening behind the scenes. And there's no like wishy-washy like, oh, I now have this perfect model. Like, no, it takes time. So I think it's important to show the actual process rather than edit it down. That's my opinion. But anyway, guys, have a fantastic day. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, and check me out on TikTok, Instagram, Gumroad, Blender Market, anywhere else that I might be. I have a lot of digital content you can buy for free, or sorry, you can download for free, and then some stuff you can buy, like my blueprint shader. Guys, have a great day on YouTube. Take it easy. Check out the completed render on my Instagram.